This adorable little pedal board was the board that I took with me on a recent tour in Europe. I was playing with Liz Wright. She is an incredible singer, songwriter, interpreter of song. I'll include a link down below so you can check her out if you don't know her. This was the first time I had been out with this board, and that's what I want to talk about here, some of the adventures and misadventures that I had, and some things that I learned, and some things that I changed, and some things that I'm still thinking about with regard to pedal boards, specifically for touring with Liz, because that's the main thing that I'm doing. I realize that most of you are not touring with Liz Wright and have maybe some different needs in your pedal world, but I hope that some of the things that I'm saying here at least will be universal so that you can apply things that I've learned conceptually to your pedal board, even though it might be on a larger scale or smaller scale. Speaking of scale, the board that I had before this one, I mean, this was a new build that I had done just before I left for this recent tour. It was built by the Pedal Concierge. That's Jimmy Archie over at 30th Street Guitars here in New York. He's built a couple of boards for me. In fact, he built the previous board, which was a bigger board. That was a Temple Audio Solo 18. Had 4 pedals on it, plus the tuner and the switcher box, which I'm going to talk about the switcher box. Because you might wonder, if I'm using this tiny little board, this is a Pedal Train Nano, why would I take up a quarter of the board with a switcher box? What am I doing? So I'll talk about that. But my previous board had an overdrive and a boost and a delay and a tremolo, plus the tuner and the switcher, and then a cute little box that Jimmy put on there, some like a vintage snuff box that's you can put picks and capos and whatever in there. I had been touring with that larger board and was pretty much happy with it, but I wanted to see if I could do something smaller, so that my suitcase would weigh less. There's a 50-pound limit on suitcases when you're traveling, and so I wanted to keep the weight down and also have room to bring more clothes. Honestly, the last tour I did, my Solo 18 board, when I put it in the carrying bag, took up almost half of my suitcase, and so it limited clothes I could bring. And I don't know. I'm a person as well as a guitar player. I don't want the pedal board to take up half my suitcase. So I wanted to bring more clothes and keep the weight down and not just get a bigger suitcase. So that was one reason. Also, just option anxiety. If you're really into pedals, my previous board probably would not cause you any anxiety at all. It was pretty straightforward. But I still felt like, gosh, there's so many buttons, and am I supposed to be doing more? Am I supposed to be doing less? It was a lot. And since playing with Liz, I don't really have to, do a whole lot as far as character and color from the guitar. It's a full band. Liz's voice, it really could stand on its own. It's just so rich and dimensional. And then she's got a piano player who plays Hammond organ, which is a whole little universe unto itself. Lots of color there from the organ. A bass player, a drummer with a fairly large kit. Lots of harmony. All of us in the band sing harmony, so there's a lot of vocal stuff going on. So in that sense, I don't have to do a lot with the guitar as far as changing a lot of sounds around, but I like to have some variety. The guitar itself gives you variety, of course. I was touring with a Collings I-30, which has 2 pickups, so I could go to either pickup on its own. I could be in the middle. I could blend them. I could play fingerstyle. I could play with a pick. I could play harder, softer. There's a lot of sound that you can pull from a guitar without stepping on anything. But we're covering Liz's career in music is 20 years strong. I think she's got 9 records out. So there's lots of different guitar textures. So I wanted to at least hint at those sounds. I'm not trying to replicate sounds from records, but at least hint at them. So I just wanted to shrink down this board to the absolute bare necessities. So so I've got a tuner. Let's see, this is the tuner. I've got a switcher, this radial box, and the way that I use that, I I like to have just one cable that when I'm switching between guitars, electric and acoustic, I just use the same cable. I step on the tuner to mute, unplug, plug in the other guitar, and throughout the show, I'm going back and forth between electric and acoustic. So one cable that goes into the tuner, out of the tuner into the AB box, then one side of the AB box continues on to the remaining pedals, which are an overdrive and boost. This is this Limelight pedal. I don't know if, there you go. And then over here is reverb and tremolo. That's a Milkman pedal. It's called the F stop. So really, the two pedals at the end. Oh, I didn't finish about the switcher. So one side goes to the pedals, and then that goes out to the amplifier. And then the other side would go out to a DI box, and then that goes to the house sound system. So my acoustic is going there, my electric is going through the pedals to the amp, and I use the switcher box to route those. There's probably a smaller box I could use to achieve that, but I like this box. It's got a ground lift, it's got an isolated transformer. I don't really use that. I don't know what it does, but it sounds cool. I mean, just saying that. And then it's got a phase switch, which I have found to be very useful when I'm trying my acoustic guitar on stage and hearing it through monitors. I can't say that one way is always better, but I always try it both ways, and it does sound different. So I try to get it so it sounds good to me and also sounds good to the front of house engineer. So I don't know of a box that seems so well made, that has all these features, that does this switching. If you know of one, please tell me about it, because I'd love to save some real estate if I had another option that was smaller but comparable. And then the Limelight box is built by Electronic Audio Experiments. I just wanted an overdrive pedal that I could use to get a little bit of dirt. I'm not playing anything really, not playing any rock per se on Liz's gig, but we do a cover of Old Man by Neil Young, so try to have at least some grit there. I'm not going to be able to sound like Neil, but at least, like I say, hint at that. And then reverb and tremolo. I'm using backline amps on tour, usually either a Fender 65 reissue deluxe reverb or a 68 custom deluxe reverb. Those amps have reverb and tremolo, but I find that in some cases they don't sound that great, really. So I like having my own reverb and tremolo that I can control a little bit more. Also, it's just neater and tidier to have that on this pedal board rather than bringing the foot switch out from the back of the Fender amp and sticking it on the floor. When I started this tour with Liz, this board looked a little different. I had this tuner on there, Sonic Research ST200. And instead of the Milkman pedal, I had this pedal, the Skitter by Champion Lassie. And I had to change up on the tour because of a couple of things. This pedal, at the first couple of shows, for some reason, was popping when I switched it. Now, it hadn't done that at home, so it surprised me. I thought maybe because we were in Europe, the first two shows were in Zurich and Basel. And I thought, okay, maybe there's something with the power transformer changing voltages. Uh, so I tried to isolate it from all that. I took it off my board. Did I put a battery in it? I think I put a battery in it. I'm going to say I put a battery in it. Someone will correct me if that's not a possible thing with this tuner. I think it is. Anyway, I did everything I could to isolate it from things that I thought could be the problem, and I couldn't make the pop go away. And what's worse is that it was intermittent. It'd be okay for a while, and then I'd switch guitars and switch back between the electric and the acoustic, and there it was. Uh, that can't happen on a stage for a tour. It was popping in the amp, it was popping in the house, because all of this stuff is interconnected through the switcher box. I just can't have there be a loud audible, a loud pop when I switch guitars, and an unpredictable one at that. So I asked the backline company, that's the company that was renting us our all of our stage gear for those two shows in Switzerland. I asked them if they had another tuner. They did. They had a TC Electronic Polytune, not the mini one, or I guess they call it mini, but the full size one. I tried that, same situation. I asked if they had anything else, and they had this Boss pedal. That was fine. So I don't know a lot about electricity and electronics. I don't know if the kind of switch that's in the Boss, it's a soft switch. I don't know if it has to do with that, or if it has to do with true bypass versus buffered. The Boss is definitely buffered. This, I believe, is true bypass. So maybe there's something about that. Whatever it was, I just needed to make it stop. So I bought this Boss tuner, and it solved the problem. And the Sonic Research tuner has been fine ever since. So maybe there was something in particular in the electricity going on, something funny with the amplifier. I really don't know, but it's just one of those things where you just have to make it stop. So I tried what I could and moved forward. The Boss tuner is cool, but I liked the sort of dark theme of my pedal board, so I don't know if Boss makes these in black, but they should. The other thing is it's buffered, so some people say, "Oh, well, that messes with your sound." Like if you're a purist about your tone, you might prefer a true bypass to a buffered pedal. Honestly, I don't notice a huge difference, and maybe you do. So anyway, so that's that. This pedal is super duper cool. I'm gonna play a little example through here in a minute so you can hear what it sounds like. But it didn't do exactly what I wanted. What it does is really unique. The LFO affects the reverb and the tremolo, and they can be pulsing together, in sync, or they can be pulsing 180 degrees out of phase, so that when the reverb is coming up, the tremolo is getting less. You know what I mean? when I watched some product demos of this online, I missed a very important thing, which is, there's two foot switches. I was thinking that would let me turn the reverb and tremolo on and off independently. It doesn't really do that. There's an on and off switch and a tempo switch. So it didn't do what I needed it to do, and also just was like a little too cool. Really, I wanted something more like bias tremolo, so I did a little research and found that this Milkman pedal, the f-stop, does bias tremolo, and that's the sound that I like and that I wanted. And I was already on tour, so I found one of these used in a shop, and it was kind of a little miracle. Anyway, I don't know if this pedal board is going to stay as it is, but it got me through the tour, and so I'm grateful for that. The Milkman pedal. Some of you might already be thinking the thing that I'm about to say, which is that why didn't I just get a Strymon Flint? That's got reverb and tremolo, has 3 different flavors of reverb, 3 different flavors of tremolo. Would definitely fit in this spot on my board, and they're everywhere, easy to find. Well, I just a funny thing about me is that I tend to not want to play the pedal that everyone has, or for that matter, the guitar that everyone has, or and so on. Since that pedal is so everywhere now, I resisted putting it on my board. But I think in the end, it might be a useful tool. Like, obviously, it works, it sounds good. Otherwise, everybody wouldn't be using one. I really do love the tremolo in this Milkman f-stop. The reverb is okay. I don't think it's super special, but it does the job. So I might try a Flint. I don't know. The overdrive, the Limelight overdrive, is really great. The overdrive sounds are cool. I read in their literature that it's based on a blues breaker pedal loosely, and so maybe that tells you something about what it sounds like. The boost is just really straightforward, just makes your guitar louder. But I'm just barely using the drive on it, which has been true for me pretty much on any overdrive pedal I've ever used, even if it's something that is kind of sold as a low gain overdrive. I'm still probably only turning the drive to like 9 o'clock, maybe. I'm using the lowest amount of gain and drive on this pedal, and that's true just across the board. So it got me thinking, like, what if I found something that was even less drive, and then I could actually crank it up and have more range to find the sweet spot. And the sweet spot will change in different venues, different kinds of monitors, different, every night, even with the same band playing more or less the same music, I still wind up dialing in my pedals to the room, to the sound system, and so on. And so I thought, well, what if there was something that is even lower gain than that, and then I could push it and get to hear just something different. I don't know. It's maybe just an idea. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you enjoy this channel, be sure to subscribe. I really appreciate it. Okay, so what are the takeaways here? I'll give you 5. The first is that if you're trying to build a really compact board like I was, finding a cool twofer can really be essential. On my bigger board, I had an overdrive pedal and a boost pedal. Now that's 2 in 1. On my bigger board, I had a tremolo pedal and a delay pedal. Now I've got one box that does tremolo and reverb. Not quite the same thing, but for what I'm doing, that's fine. So yeah, look for cool twofer pedals. Next takeaway is be nice. When you are touring or even just playing at your local pub, there's going to be some crew at your local pub. It just might be one person doing the whole sound thing. If you're on tour, there might be a bunch of folks on stage when you show up to set up your stuff. And you might be in a grumpy mood. Maybe you just got off of a long flight, or maybe you've had a hard day for some other reason, or you need a coffee, or you've had too much coffee, or whatever. And those crew people, they're people, and be nice to them. And I'll tell you why, but you don't really need any reason why. You should just be nice to them, full stop. But in my case, it helps. I needed to try some different tuners because my tuner pedal was making a weird noise. If I was a jerk to those guys when I first showed up, maybe they wouldn't have said, "Oh yeah, we've got other tuners you can try," or "Here, let us help you. What can we do?" So you don't need a reason to be nice, but you'll find that it goes a long way and will pay you back dividends in the end for sure. Another takeaway with regard to me and the Flint is like sometimes everyone's favorite pedal is really cool, you know? So, okay, that's a note to me more than anything else. Another thing I'd like you to take away from this video is that your guitar has plenty of sounds in it already. It probably has 2 pickups, maybe 3. Use them. You've got a pick, you've got your fingers, you can dig in, you can touch the guitar softly, you can play by the bridge, you can play by the fretboard. There's so much you can do just with your guitar. So see what you can do there, and maybe you can wind up taking a pedal or 2 off of your board just by doing more with your bare hands. The last little thing I'd like you to take away from this video is whenever possible, try your pedals out in front of whatever amp you really expect to be playing through. Whether it's your home amp or an amp at a small club or an amp on the road, like I mostly on the road see these reissue 65 Deluxe Reverb amps. It's a perfectly good amp, but it doesn't sound much like the amps that I have at home. And if I'm being honest, I don't think they sound a whole lot like actual vintage Deluxe Reverb amps in my experience. On this tour I just did with Liz Wright, at the end of the tour, the last show, the equipment rental company actually brought a 1965 Deluxe Reverb, and it was amazing to hear. Like, my guitar felt better, sounded better, felt better. The pedals, everything was just way better. But of course, those amps aren't everywhere. So I mention this because when I went to try out my pedals and kind of get a sense of what this pedal board could do, I plugged into the amps that they had at 30th Street Guitars in the amp room. They've got this nice little Tyler 22. They have some vintage Fender amps. They don't have a reissue Deluxe Reverb. So in retrospect, I think it would have been useful for me to go to some big shop like Guitar Center or Sam Ash and try it out there, or even rent a couple hours in a rehearsal room in New York where you see those kind of amps, and just get to know the pedals as they're more likely to sound in real life when you go out and play. I don't know that I would have made any different decisions about the pedals that I bought, but just how I set them, and just getting to know what they're capable of. Try to be realistic with how you're doing that. So there you go. If you've had any pedal adventures or misadventures that you'd like to share, you can leave them in the comments down below.